As Nam watched the Morak fleet flee, he couldn't help but feel pride in humanity's achievement. They had taken everything they had learned from countless Earth battles and applied it to space warfare, creating something the aliens couldn't hope to counter. The stars themselves had become humanity's new battlefield, and they had proven once again why Earth's children were not to be underestimated. Ambassador Jae-hyuk Kim stood before the massive windows of the neutral space station, watching Earth's blue sphere rotate slowly in the distance. Behind him, the Morak delegation shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The peace negotiations were about to begin, but this time, Earth would be dictating the terms. The Grand Chamber fell silent as Kim turned to address both human and alien representatives. His voice carried the weight of humanity's recent victory, tempered with the wisdom gained from thousands of years of conflict and resolution. "We did not want this war," he began, "but we were ready for it. Now we will ensure it never happens again." The Morak delegates, their once proud postures now subdued, listened intently as humanity's terms were laid out. Dr. Dae-yum Lee sat at her console, recording every detail of the historic meeting. Her analysis would help future generations understand this pivotal moment when humanity finally revealed its true strength to the galaxy. The data scrolling across her screen told a story of unprecedented adaptation and innovation. The terms were clear and non-negotiable. Earth and all its colonies would be recognized as a sovereign power. Any attack on human settlements would be considered an act of war against all of humanity. The Morak would share their technology databases, not as a punishment, but as a gesture of mutual understanding. "You thought us primitive," Kim continued, "but you discovered that humanity's strength lies not in our current technology, but in our ability to learn, adapt, and overcome." The alien delegates murmured in agreement, their recent defeat still fresh in their memories. Colonel Woo Jin-choi, standing guard near the chamber's entrance, watched with pride. His forces had played a crucial role in the victory, and now he was witnessing the fruits of their sacrifice. The sight of the once mighty Morak, humbly accepting human terms, filled him with a sense of accomplishment. Word of the peace treaty spread quickly through the galaxy's communication networks. Other alien civilizations, who had watched the conflict with interest, began reassessing their views of the small blue planet and its inhabitants. Humanity had proven itself not just as warriors, but as a force for innovation and adaptation. "The galaxy now knows," Dr. Lee wrote in her report, "that humans don't just fight wars. We learn from them. Each conflict makes us stronger, smarter, more adaptive. The Morak didn't just lose a war. They awakened a sleeping giant." The peace treaty included provisions for cultural exchange and technological cooperation. Earth wanted not just peace, but understanding. The humans knew from their own history that lasting peace came from mutual respect and cooperation, not just military victory. Ambassador Kim made sure the message was clear. Earth sought peace, but would always be ready for war. The human delegation presented evidence of defensive installations and weapons systems that hadn't even been used in the conflict, demonstrating that humanity had held back during the fighting. "We defend what is ours," Kim stated firmly, "but we also extend a hand in friendship to those who respect us." The Morak War Council, impressed by this balance of strength and diplomacy, agreed to all conditions without protest. As news of the treaty spread to Earth's colonies, celebrations broke out across human space. They had not just survived their first interstellar war. They had emerged stronger, more united, and with a new respect from the galactic community. Dr. Lee's final analysis became required reading across the galaxy. It detailed how humans had turned their history of conflict into an advantage, how they had improved upon alien technology instead of just copying it, and how their adaptability made them unique among known species. Colonel Choi's famous remark at the victory celebration spread through human space. They thought they found an easy target. Instead, they found Earth. The phrase became a reminder of humanity's resilience and determination. The aftermath of the war brought unexpected benefits. Other alien civilizations, impressed by human ingenuity, sought peaceful contact and trade agreements. Earth's reputation evolved from primitive newcomers to respected innovators almost overnight. As the peace delegation prepared to return to Earth, Ambassador Kim made one final statement that would be remembered for generations. "We did not choose this war, but we chose to end it on our terms. Let the galaxy remember. Earth's children reach for the stars not just with hope, but with the strength and wisdom gained from our long journey to reach them." The war with the Morak became a turning point in human history. The moment when humanity proved it wasn't just ready for the stars, but ready to defend its place among them. The small blue planet had shown the galaxy that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are the ones you underestimate. Elliot blinked, trying to gather enough strength to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. He cleared it, still unsure if he was hallucinating or if these beings were real. Yes. I'm not from here," he stammered, his voice hoarse and weak. "I was sent here, exiled." The woman tilted her head slightly, as though she were studying him. Then, with a slight nod, she motioned for him to follow her. Without a word, she turned and walked away, her companions following silently behind her. Elliot hesitated. Could he trust them? They seemed different, otherworldly, in fact, but they had saved him from the harsh desert, at least for now. He had no choice but to follow. There was no way he could survive out here alone, not after everything that had happened. With great effort, he pushed himself to his feet and stumbled after her, each step feeling like an eternity. His body screamed in pain, but the pull of the oasis was stronger than the exhaustion. The water, the cool air, the strange new life, it all drew him in. Maybe these beings knew something about survival here. Maybe they had the answers he needed. As he followed the shimmering figures through the oasis, he noticed the place was even more extraordinary than he had first realized. The ground beneath his feet was soft, the sand replaced by lush, green grass. The trees, though strange, seemed to hum with life. Their bark was a silver-blue color, and their leaves glowed faintly in the moonlight. The air was cooler here, carrying a sweet fragrance that Elliot had never smelled before, unlike anything from Earth. He had never seen anything like this, an oasis so full of life, hidden away in the middle of a desert wasteland. But there was more to this place than just the water and the plants. It felt different, as though something ancient and powerful was present here, something that the desert had kept hidden from the rest of the universe. The woman led Elliot to a clearing, where a large, clear pool of water shimmered under the twin moons. The water seemed to glow with an ethereal light, almost like the stars had been captured in it. Elliot couldn't resist. He knelt beside it and scooped up some water in his hands, drinking deeply. It was cool, refreshing, and unlike anything he had tasted before. He closed his eyes, savoring it, feeling the life return to his tired body. As he drank, he became aware of the woman watching him. She stood by the edge of the pool, her posture straight and proud, yet calm. Her eyes were soft now, though still filled with an intelligence that made Elliot feel small in comparison. "You are lucky," she said quietly, her voice like a soft breeze. "Few ever find this place." Elliot paused and wiped his mouth. "Why? Where am I? Who are you?" The woman regarded him for a moment, as if considering how much to reveal. Finally, she spoke again. "This place is the last sanctuary of my people. We are the Elurith. We have lived here for many centuries, hidden from the rest of the galaxy." Elliot's mind raced. The Elurith. He had never heard of them. "I've never heard of your people," he admitted. "Are you from another planet? Another star system?" The woman nodded. "Yes, we come from a far-off star system, far beyond the reach of the Galactic Council. Long ago, our people were part of a great civilization that spanned across the stars. We were explorers, teachers, and artists. But the Council grew fearful of us. They destroyed our cities, hunted us down, and forced us into hiding." Elliot frowned. "That sounds horrible. But why here?" Why stay hidden? She looked away for a moment, as though the memories were painful. The council's greed is endless. They will not stop until they have consumed everything, and we could not let them do that to our people. We fled here to Torvelis, to this hidden sanctuary, and we have stayed here ever since. Elliot nodded, understanding the pain in her voice. The council was not known for its mercy or its respect for other species. He had seen it firsthand during his work as a diplomat. It made sense now why they had sent him here to die. If they knew that the Alarith still existed, they would likely want to control them, use them, or destroy them entirely. How long have you been here? Elliot asked, his curiosity growing. Centuries, she replied, her eyes darkening with the weight of the years. We have lived in isolation, learning to survive on our own, far from the reach of the Council's power. But now, things have changed. The Council has become aware of us, and they will come for us. Soon. Elliot's mind spun. The idea of the Galactic Council discovering this place, this peaceful sanctuary, filled him with dread. But he also understood something else. The Alarith were not just survivors. They were a people with knowledge, culture, and wisdom that could change the course of history. He looked back at the woman. What are you going to do? She met his gaze, her expression hardening. We will fight. We will not let them take our home, our people, without a fight. Elliot felt a spark of determination light within him. He had been cast aside, exiled to this wasteland. But now, he had found something far greater than survival. He had found a chance to make a difference, to help these people fight back against an oppressive force. For the first time since he arrived on Torvelis, he felt a sense of purpose. I want to help, Elliot said, surprising himself with the words. I know I'm just one man, but I can't stand by and let the Council destroy you. I'll do whatever I can. The woman studied him for a long moment, as if weighing his sincerity. Finally, she nodded. We will need all the help we can get. But first, you must prove your worth to us. Prove that you can survive here, that you are strong enough to stand with us. This place is not just a sanctuary. It is also a test of your spirit. Elliot stood straighter, his determination growing. I understand. I'm ready. I'll do whatever it takes. The woman smiled faintly, her eyes softening for the first time. Very well. Your journey is just beginning, human. Welcome to the oasis. As the night stretched on, and the stars above them flickered, Elliot felt a strange sense of belonging. He didn't know what the future held or what challenges lay ahead, but one thing was certain. He had found allies in this mysterious, hidden world, and he would not let them fall to the Council. Elliot had never been one to easily earn trust. As a diplomat, he was used to walking a fine line between negotiation and persuasion, sometimes not knowing if the people he was speaking to truly believed in his words. He had always relied on words, but now, stranded on a desert world with people he knew little about, it was clear to him that actions would speak louder than anything he could say. The Alarith were a quiet and mysterious people. When Elliot first arrived in their oasis, he had been uncertain of their intentions. He had been desperate for survival, yet their strange beauty and otherworldly presence made him hesitate. The soft glow of their skin, their silken clothes that shimmered as they moved, the way they seemed to flow rather than walk. It was as if they were not entirely part of the world he had known. It was hard to shake the feeling that they were somehow above the struggles of normal life. But Elliot quickly realized that they weren't just strange. They were survivors. Despite the initial fear he felt, he knew he couldn't afford to be suspicious. They had saved his life. He had no idea why they had decided to help him, but he couldn't waste this second chance. The woman who had first spoken to him, the leader of the Alarith, introduced herself as Soraya. Her name felt like it held weight, like it meant something powerful. She was calm, yet there was a sharpness in her eyes. She seemed to be the one who held the most knowledge about the Alarith and their history. She was also the one who had offered him a chance to prove himself. Here, you will learn to survive in Torvelis, Syria said as she stood by the water, her voice steady. "The desert will test you, just as it tested us. But you must learn the ways of the land. If you can't adapt, you won't last." Her words were not harsh, but they were firm. Elliot understood that she wasn't just trying to scare him. This was their reality. Survival in this harsh, unforgiving desert had to be earned. The first few days felt like a blur of endless challenges. Elliot was shown how to set up a shelter using the resources available to him. The Alerith taught him to make use of the desert's resources in ways he never would have imagined. He learned how to filter water from the air using an ancient method that involved the rare plants in the oasis. He was shown how to read the wind, how to follow the stars, and how to identify signs of dangerous creatures that roamed the desert at night. There was no room for hesitation. Every step was essential for survival. But more than that, Elliot learned patience. Patience was something he had never had much of. As a diplomat, he was always in a rush, always eager to move forward, to resolve issues and negotiate terms. Here, on Torvallis, the desert had its own rhythm, its own pace. It didn't care about the deadlines or the urgency of the council's politics. Time moved slowly, and if Elliot didn't adapt, he would quickly lose everything he had fought to hold on to. Syria's lessons were always quiet but direct. She never pushed him too hard, yet Elliot could feel the weight of her expectations. She didn't trust him yet, not completely. She watched him carefully as he learned the basics of survival. Every time he faltered, every time he failed, she was there to guide him without saying a word. When he stumbled over his own feet while attempting to climb one of the towering trees in the oasis, she simply watched and then offered a small, knowing smile. "You'll get the hang of it," she would say. It wasn't just the survival skills that Elliot had to learn. Over time, he discovered that Syria and the other Alerith were watching him for something deeper. They weren't just observing his actions. They were trying to understand his character. Could they trust him? Could he prove that he was more than just an outsider, more than just the human who had been exiled here? It became clear that they had no reason to trust him just because he was a diplomat. The Alerith had their own history, their own struggles, and they needed to know that he wasn't just another person sent by the Galactic Council to manipulate them. One afternoon, after several days of exhausting training, Elliot sat by the water in the oasis, wiping the sweat from his brow. It was the first moment of peace he had had since arriving. His body was sore, and he was tired, but he felt a small sense of accomplishment. The desert had tried to break him, but he was still standing. He was still alive. Syria approached quietly, her footsteps barely making a sound on the soft grass. She sat down beside him, her gaze fixed on the stars that began to twinkle in the evening sky. For a while, neither of them spoke. There was no need to fill the silence with words. The night was peaceful here, and it was clear that both of them were enjoying the quiet moment. Finally, Syria broke the silence. "You are stronger than you look," she said softly. "I think you have learned more in these few days than some of our own people have in years." Elliot looked at her in surprise. He wasn't used to hearing such praise, especially not from someone who was as proud and reserved as Syria. He knew she wasn't just speaking out of kindness. She meant it. "I didn't have much choice," Elliot replied with a small grin. "It was either learn to survive, or die," she finished for him. "Yes, and that is why we are careful with who we trust. We cannot afford to take chances with our survival. Not again." Elliot nodded. He understood now. The Alerith were not just survivors. They were warriors in their own right. They had been forced to fight for their very existence for centuries. And now, they were testing him to see if he could stand with them, to see if he could be trusted to fight beside them. "Why are you helping me?" Elliot asked suddenly, the question slipping out before he could stop it. "You didn't have to. You could have left me to die in the desert, like the council clearly wanted. But instead you took me in. Why?" Syria turned to face him, her expression soft but serious. "Because not everyone who is sent by the council is the same. You may be a human, But you are not like the others they have sent before. You came here with no weapons, no agenda. You could have turned your back on us, but you did not. You chose to stay. That shows strength of character. And for that, I will trust you." Elliot was taken aback by her words. He had always been told that diplomacy was about finding common ground, about smoothing over differences. But this was something deeper. Syria was looking at him not just as a diplomat, but as a person, someone who had to prove himself worthy of trust. It wasn't easy, but he had done enough to show that he was willing to fight for them. From that moment forward, things began to change between them. Elliot wasn't just an outsider anymore. He was learning to become part of the Ellerith community. He was no longer just a survivor. He was becoming one of them. Syria began to involve him in their daily tasks, showing him how to gather food from the desert's harsh landscape. She taught him how to hunt the dangerous creatures that roamed the sands, creatures that were both a threat and a resource. She even introduced him to their ways of communication, which were more subtle than the words he was used to. The Ellerith spoke in gestures and expressions, and there was a certain beauty in the way they communicated without speaking. Elliot found himself fascinated by their customs and the way they connected with each other without needing to say a word. With each passing day, Elliot proved himself further. He learned the ways of the Ellerith, their skills, their traditions, and their methods for surviving in this harsh land. He earned their trust by simply being there, by showing that he was willing to work just as hard as they did, to put in the effort, to endure the desert alongside them. It wasn't about fancy words or diplomacy. It was about actions, about showing that he was ready to fight for them, just as they had fought for their survival. But as much as he had proven his worth, Elliot knew the hardest challenge was still ahead. The council hadn't forgotten about him, and soon they would come to claim what they believed was theirs. The Ellerith would need all the help they could get to survive the coming storm. For now, though, Elliot was content. He had earned their trust, and with it, the chance to fight by their side. He had found a new family here, in the heart of the desert, and he would do whatever it took to protect them. Days passed, and the desert continued to test Elliot. The scorching sun, the unforgiving winds, the harsh environment, each element seemed to work against him. But he had learned much from the Ellerith. He could no longer imagine life without the oasis, without the knowledge they had shared with him. The desert, once a place of isolation and danger, had become a place of strange beauty. However, Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Syria's words echoed in his mind. The council will come for us soon. He had no way of knowing when the council would discover the hidden oasis. The Ellerith had done their best to stay out of the council's reach, hiding in this remote corner of the galaxy. But the council's influence was vast, its reach long, and it wasn't hard to imagine them sending scouts or spies to search for planets and systems that might have something to hide. Elliot's unease grew each day. The sun would set, and his thoughts would turn toward the sky, wondering if the council's ships were on their way. There had been no word, no sign that they had discovered the oasis, but Elliot knew that peace in this situation could only be temporary. The council's greed and desire for control knew no bounds. It was on the 15th day of his stay that the first sign of the council's approach came. Elliot was working in the oasis garden, his hands deep in the soil as he helped Syria cultivate plants that would provide food and medicinal resources for the Ellerith. They had been working in silence, the only sound coming from the gentle rustling of the plants in the breeze. Suddenly, Syria froze, her eyes narrowing. Elliot noticed it immediately. Her body had tensed, and she stood rigid as if listening for something. He looked up, confused, unsure of what had caused the change in her demeanor. Syria turned to him, her voice urgent. "We have to go. Now." Elliot's heart skipped a beat. What's going on? What happened? Syria didn't answer him directly. She just grabbed his arm firmly and led him through the thick vegetation of the oasis. The other Ellerith were already moving with purpose, their eyes scanning the skies as they worked together to secure the area. They were calm but focused, as though they had anticipated this moment for a long time. Elliot's mind raced as he struggled to keep up. His legs burned, and his chest ached with every breath. But there was no time to question Soraya or ask her for more details. It was clear that something had changed, something that made their usual quiet, peaceful life suddenly feel like it was about to come to an end. "Do you think it's the council?" Elliot asked, panting. Syria nodded grimly. "It has to be. No one else could have found us." They made their way to a high cliff that overlooked the oasis, where the Alerith had built a lookout post. From this vantage point, Elliot could see the vast desert stretching out before him, a never-ending sea of sand. But there, in the distance, something caught his eye. At first, it looked like a mirage, a shimmer in the heat, but as his eyes focused, he saw it more clearly. A group of ships. It wasn't just one ship, it was a fleet that was heading straight for the oasis. Elliot felt his heart race as the realization hit him like a slap to the face. The council had found them. After years of hiding, they were no longer safe. They were being hunted, and there was no place left to run. Syria didn't hesitate. She turned to the others and gave them quick orders in their language, which Elliot still couldn't fully understand. The Alerith immediately sprang into action, moving with efficiency and purpose. Some of them began dismantling equipment and packing up supplies, while others took positions on the cliff, ready to defend the oasis. Elliot looked at Soraya, his mind reeling. "What do we do now? How can we stop them?" "We cannot stop them with force," Soraya replied, her voice steady. "The council's ships are too powerful, and we are not an army. But we have our ways. We have survived for this long because we understand the land, the desert, and its secrets. Now, we must use them." Elliot felt a mix of fear and determination surge through him. He had seen the council's power firsthand during his time as a diplomat. Their ships were massive, their weapons advanced. The idea of facing them was terrifying, but he had no choice. He had already chosen his side. These people had taken him in when he had nowhere else to go. They had trusted him, and now it was his turn to stand with them. Syria gave him a quick, knowing look. "You've learned much, human. Now you must learn more. Come, there is no time to waste." Elliot followed her as she led him down a narrow path that snaked through the rocky cliffs. The air was thick with tension, and the sound of distant engines rumbled in the sky. The Alerith moved quickly and silently, their long, graceful movements belying the urgency of the situation. After what felt like an eternity, they arrived at a hidden cave system beneath the cliffs. The entrance was concealed by thick vines, but as Syria pushed through them, Elliot saw that the cave led deep into the heart of the mountain. Inside, the temperature dropped significantly, and the air was cooler, fresher. "This is where we hide," Soraya said quietly. "The Alerith have kept this place secret for generations. Only a few of us know of its existence. It was built to protect us if the day ever came when the council found us." Elliot looked around, trying to take in his surroundings. The cave was much larger than he had expected, with walls covered in glowing symbols. The symbols seemed to pulse with energy, as if they were alive. The air felt electric, charged with some kind of power. It was clear that this place was more than just a refuge. It was something sacred to the Alerith. Syria moved to the center of the cave, where a large stone pedestal stood. Atop the pedestal was a strange device, a mixture of ancient technology and intricate craftsmanship. Syria touched the device gently, and the symbols on the walls glowed brighter. "This," she said, "is our last defense. It was built by our ancestors long ago, during the time of the Great Exile. It holds the power to create an energy field strong enough to repel the Council's ships, if it works." Elliot's eyes widened as he processed what Syria was saying. "You mean you can fight back with that device?" Syria's gaze hardened. "We must try. It is our only hope." The thought of facing the Council with something as uncertain as this device filled Elliot with both hope and dread. The Alarith had been hiding for so long, relying on their wisdom and knowledge to survive. Now they were asking him to stand with them once again. "Will it be enough?" Elliot asked, his voice tinged with doubt. Syria looked at him, her expression unreadable. "I do not know, but we must try. If we do not, we will be lost." The rumble of the approaching ships grew louder. Elliot could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about resistance, about fighting for a future where the Alarith and their peaceful way of life could survive. As Syria began to activate the device, Elliot's thoughts raced. He had come to Torvalis as an exile, sent by the Galactic Council to die in a desert. Now, he was fighting alongside the Alarith for their very existence. It was a strange turn of events, and Elliot had no idea what the outcome would be. But one thing was certain. He was ready to fight. He had found a purpose here. And if the Council thought they could simply take what they wanted from this world, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The Alarith had lived in hiding for centuries. But today they were going to stand and fight. And Elliot was going to stand with them. The moment the first Council ship appeared in the sky, a heavy silence fell over the oasis. For a brief moment, everything seemed frozen in time. The Alarith had prepared for this moment for years, but now that it had arrived, there was no going back. The ships were massive, their sleek forms cutting through the desert sky like dark, looming shadows. Elliot could feel his heart pounding in his chest as the unmistakable rumble of their engines grew louder and louder. Syria's face was calm, but there was a hardness in her eyes. She had always been composed, but now there was something else, something fierce. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about standing up to the Council, who had long sought to control the galaxy, to destroy everything that was different and unknown. And here, in the heart of the desert, they had found something they hadn't bargained for. "They're here," Elliot whispered, barely believing what he was seeing. Syria nodded, her expression grim. "Yes, the time has come." The other Alarith moved quickly, gathering their belongings and preparing to defend their home. They had lived in the shadows for so long, but now they were forced to confront the very force that had driven them into hiding. They had no choice but to resist. If they didn't, they would be lost forever. Elliot stood with Syria at the cliffside, his mind racing. He had been part of the Council for years, negotiating with them, working to smooth things over. But now, he realized, the Council wasn't about diplomacy or compromise. They wanted power, and they would stop at nothing to take control of everything in their path. And the Alarith were in their way. "We have to act quickly," Syria said, her voice low and urgent. "The device is our only chance. We need to power it up, but the energy will draw attention. If we don't act fast enough, the ships will arrive before we can finish." Elliot nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. There was no time to waste. The Alarith had prepared for years, but even with their knowledge of the desert, they were no match for the Council's might. Their only hope was this ancient device, a powerful relic that could potentially create a barrier strong enough to protect the oasis from the ships overhead. But it had never been tested. They didn't know if it would work. Elliot had learned quickly that the Alarith were not only skilled in survival, but they were also a proud and ancient people. They had fought wars in the past, but they had never faced an enemy like the Council. Their history was full of sacrifice, but even they could only do so much. The fight ahead was uncertain, but it was the only option they had. They moved swiftly, following the narrow path that led to the heart of the cave system. The device was hidden deep within the cave, and Syria had told Elliot that only a few people knew of its existence. The Alarith had kept it safe, knowing that one day they might need it. As they reached the center of the cave, the glowing symbols on the walls pulsed with a soft light, casting eerie shadows on the stone floor. The device stood tall in the middle of the room, its intricate design humming with energy. It was a beautiful and terrifying sight. something that seemed both ancient and futuristic, a fusion of art and technology. "This is it," Syria said, her voice steady. "It must be activated manually. There are no shortcuts." Elliot stepped forward, feeling a deep sense of awe and responsibility. He had only been with the Alerith for a short time, but in that time, he had come to respect them deeply. They had shown him kindness and trust, and now it was his turn to show that he could stand with them, fight for them, and make sure they survived. He reached for the device, but Syria stopped him. "Wait," she said, her voice low and serious. "There is something you need to understand. This device requires more than just energy. It requires a sacrifice." Elliot furrowed his brow, unsure of what she meant. A sacrifice? What kind of sacrifice? Syria's gaze softened, but there was a weight in her eyes. "It's not just a machine. It is a part of our people. To activate it, we must give something of ourselves. Our life force, our energy, our connection to the land. It is not a simple task, and it is not something we take lightly." Elliot's stomach twisted with uncertainty. He had heard of such ancient rituals, but he had never truly understood what they meant. The idea of giving up something so essential, so vital, was terrifying. And yet, he understood. If this was their only chance, they had to do it. But who would make this sacrifice? Who would give up everything to ensure that the rest survived? "I don't know if I can do this," Elliot said, his voice thick with emotion. "What if it doesn't work? What if we lose everything?" Syria stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We have all faced this moment in our own way. The Council has taken from us for so long. It is time for us to take a stand. We will not go quietly into the dark. If we must give something to survive, then we will. And we will do it together." Leo swallowed hard. He had felt something shift inside him after the revelation, but he had never tested this newfound connection. Could he really control the power of the universe, the force that bound all living things together? Was he truly ready? Zira continued, her gaze piercing. "You have the potential, but that's not enough. You must understand the balance. The universe is not just about power, it's about how you use it. It's about responsibility." The words hit him like a wave. Zira was right. Power without control could destroy just as easily as it could create. Leo knew that he had to prove he could control it, prove that he wasn't just a soldier, a human with emotions, but someone who could command the force that connected all life. "I'm ready," Leo said, his voice firm. He didn't know if he truly was, but he had no choice. He couldn't back down now. Zira nodded slowly, her face unreadable. "Very well. Your test will take place in the Convergence Chamber. It is a place where the energies of the universe meet, where the forces of creation and destruction balance. There, you will face a trial unlike any other." Leo followed her as she led him through the palace, past corridors he had never seen before, deeper into the heart of the Zenorian world. The palace itself was a maze, its walls adorned with symbols and inscriptions that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. The deeper they went, the more Leo felt the weight of history pressing down on him. He wasn't just standing in a palace now. He was standing on the threshold of something ancient, something powerful. Finally, they reached a door that seemed to hum with energy. The door was large and intricate, made of what appeared to be a translucent material that shimmered like liquid silver. Zira placed her hand on the door, and it opened with a soft sound, revealing the Convergence Chamber. The room inside was unlike anything Leo had ever seen. It was vast, stretching out in all directions, with walls made of pure energy, swirling and shifting like liquid light. The center of the room was dominated by a large glowing sphere, its surface constantly changing. Around the sphere were 4 pillars, each made of a different material: stone, crystal, metal, and what appeared to be living plant matter. They were arranged in a perfect circle, forming a barrier around the sphere. "This is where all energies converge," Zira explained, her voice echoing in the vast space. It is a place of balance. It is where creation and destruction meet, where life and death exist in harmony. But it is also a place of great danger. If you cannot control the power, it will consume you. Leo's stomach churned. The weight of the challenge was settling in. He had faced many trials before, but this felt different. This was not just a battle of wits or strength. This was about mastering the universe itself, about understanding the delicate balance between life and death, creation and destruction. You must channel the energy of this room, Zyra continued, her eyes locked on Leo. Feel the power that flows through everything. Reach out and connect with it. But remember, if you lose control, you will fail. And failure will have consequences far beyond this room. Leo nodded, his mind racing. He had to trust in what he had learned. He had to believe in the power within him, in his ability to connect with the universe. Slowly, he stepped into the center of the room, his feet sinking into the smooth, glowing surface of the floor. The moment he stepped forward, he felt it. A surge of energy flooded through him, filling every fiber of his being. It was overwhelming, like 1,000 thoughts rushing through his mind all at once, like the very fabric of existence was coursing through him. He could feel the pulse of life all around him, the beating hearts of the stars, the hum of the galaxies, the rhythm of the earth beneath his feet. It was beautiful, but it was also terrifying. It was too much. He stumbled for a moment, but he steadied himself, taking a deep breath. He closed his eyes and reached out, trying to feel the flow of the energy. It was like trying to grasp water with his bare hands. It slipped through his fingers, elusive and untamed. But then he remembered the lessons Zyra had taught him, the importance of balance, of control. He didn't need to force the power. He just needed to allow it to flow through him, to trust in the connection that he had with the universe. As he focused, the energy began to respond. It was like a living thing, moving in response to his thoughts, to his emotions. He could feel the pulse of the universe in his chest, in his heart. He was one with it. He was part of something greater than himself. But even as the power swirled around him, Leo could sense something else, something darker, something dangerous. It was like a shadow lurking at the edge of his consciousness, a reminder that this power was not something to be taken lightly. He reached out again, trying to center himself. His hands began to glow with the energy, and he felt the warmth of it spreading through him. The sphere in the center of the room pulsed in time with his heartbeat, growing brighter and more intense. Focus, Zyra's voice came from behind him, steady and calm. Focus on what you want to achieve. Don't let the power control you. You must control it. Leo nodded, his focus sharpening. He could feel the energy of the sphere, the 4 pillars, all converging in the center of the room. It was like the entire universe was converging in one place, and it was all within his reach. He focused on the balance between life and death, creation and destruction. He didn't want to destroy. He didn't want to harm. He wanted to create, to heal, to bring things together. He wanted to prove that humanity wasn't just about war, about violence. Humans had the power to build, to connect, to love. Slowly, he began to shape the energy. It wasn't easy. Every instinct in his body screamed for him to control it with force, to dominate it. But he resisted. He had to be gentle, like a gardener tending to a fragile plant. The energy responded, swirling around him in a delicate dance. The sphere in the center of the room began to change, its surface shimmering with new colors, soft blues, greens, and golds. The 4 pillars trembled as the energy balanced itself, shifting in response to Leo's will. For the first time, Leo felt a sense of peace. He was controlling it. He wasn't just using the power, he was becoming one with it. Zyra watched him closely, her expression unreadable. Leo couldn't tell if he was passing the test or failing it. But in that moment, he didn't care. He was no longer just a soldier, no longer just a human trying to survive. He was something more. The energy around him continued to shift and change, But Leo was no longer overwhelmed. He was in control. He had found the balance, the delicate equilibrium that Sarah had spoken of. He had passed the test, not because he had won, but because he had understood. As the energy began to settle, the convergence chamber grew still. The glowing sphere dimmed, and the pillars stopped trembling. Leo opened his eyes, his body feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. The test was over. Zira stepped forward, her gaze steady. "You've done it, Captain. You've proven that you can control the power. You've shown that you understand the balance." Leo exhaled slowly, relief flooding through him. He had done it. He had faced the test and come out the other side. But even as the weight of the challenge lifted, he knew that this was only one step in a much larger journey. "Thank you," he said, his voice hoarse. "I didn't know if I could do it. But I understand now." Zira nodded, a hint of approval in her eyes. "You have more to learn, Captain. But this is the beginning. You've proven that you have the potential. Now it's up to you to decide how you will use it." Leo looked up at her, determination settling in his chest. He didn't know Leo stood still, his breath steadying, his mind trying to absorb the weight of everything that had just happened. The convergence chamber, which moments ago had hummed with intense energy, now seemed eerily quiet. The soft glow of the pillars was fading, and the swirling sphere of power that had once seemed overwhelming was now calm, its vibrant colors slowly returning to a tranquil blue. It was a stark contrast to the storm of emotions and forces Leo had felt only moments before. Zira stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the now still sphere. There was a strange quiet in the air, a kind of peace that settled over them both. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. It was as if the universe itself was waiting for something, and Leo wasn't sure if that something was him or the world around him. Everything had changed. He had changed. And somehow, the weight of it felt both exhilarating and daunting. He finally spoke, his voice hoarse but steady. "I did it. I actually did it."